Bună ziua, numele meu este Octavian Salat și suntem la cea de-a doua întâlnire din seria Interviurile Teatrul Azi de la Festivalul Shakespeare de la Craiova, Ziua a 8-a. Cea de a doua întâlnire are la bază o discuție despre EUNIC România, European Union National Institutes for Culture, România, și invitații de astăzi sunt Marcus Huber, directorul Goethe Institute București și președintele EUNIC România, doamna Tamina Bojoancă, Arts Manager British Council Romania și vicepreședinte EUNIC România, și doamna Cristiana Tăutu, directoarea Fundația Nouă. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and being here.
Thank you for having us.
The first question would be an introductory question for our public and to talk a bit about the activities of your different centers, about the British Council, about the Goethe Institute, about what the Fundația Nouă is.
Who would like to start? As always.
You go first.
Good, thank you. Hello, thank you for the intro. I'm Tamina, I'm representing the British Council. The British Council is UK's international organization for cultural relations and educational opportunities. And our work in Romania is focusing on three areas: on English language, on education, and on culture. And for culture, we are based in Bucharest, but we are also active outside of Bucharest. And our work has a strategic focus around inclusion and sustainability.
Yeah. Shall I continue? We are similar, but we are also different. Goethe Institute is the Cultural Institute of the Federal Republic of Germany. And we are also working on three strands, so to say. So it's kind of we offer language courses in German language, which is also connected to an education program that we are offering. We do the cultural collaborations with local partners, which is a lot about dialogue, exchanging, co-creation, collaborations. And we have a library which allows us to use the Goethe Institute or the library also as a community space, as a space for encounter with different communities.
And Fundația Nouă is an organization based in Romania, so we are fully local, let's say, but based in Bucharest mostly. We work at the intersection between journalism and cultural production. So Scena Nouă and Școala Nouă, my journalist colleagues, are writing about culture in a very broad sense, so whatever makes us human and education. And in Rezidența Nouă, we produce exhibitions of contemporary art, and we bring communities together. We're also active around the country as well, and I could say maybe just to explain why Fundația Nouă is part of the conversation, because we are not part of UNIC, the network, but we are working together in several projects and hoping to continue that in Craiova as well, if I may.
And also, what is EUNIC Romania? What does it mean? What are the members of UNIC? What is its purpose besides the particular purpose of every cultural institute that is part of it?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it already in your introduction. We are the network, or a network of the European Cultural Institutes. We are a very diverse network. We have 19 members, I think, more or less. Sometimes we grow, sometimes we shrink. We are diverse in structure because we have different resources, we have different sizes, we also have different methodologies. It's the British Council, it's the French Institute, it's the Spanish Cultural Institute. So there are many kind of national institutes, but the thing that unites us is that we have that European approach, so that we are also understanding ourselves as a platform for European dialogue and for having conversations about European values and democracy and so forth. And we also understand us as a sort of platform, also a learning platform. So we learn from each other as very different organizations, how do we collaborate, but also with and through the collaborations with our local partners that are not only in the capital, but all over the country. And I mean, we share our resources, we combine our resources to do some bigger projects like the European Film Festival that is happening on an annual basis, but also bigger residency programs together with Fundația Noua, where we invite Romanian and European artists to work in Romania and present their works and get more into the conversation with local partners and local communities. We also follow, you mentioned it already, some strategic aspects and topics or themes that are of interest for us. That is climate change, sustainability, ecology, of course, which is an ongoing topic. It is accessibility, inclusion, and diversity. It is also supporting an informed public debate and infosphere when it comes to topics like disinformation, when it comes to quality journalism, and so forth. And we do that again through residency programs, through collaborations with local partners, where we develop combined programs and other activities.
Before we get into the big project that is coming to Craiova, the House of European Institutes, which is a project that comes from a model that was applied in Timișoara during the European Capital of Culture 2023, 24, and then a bit in 25. I would like to ask you regarding the different projects that you do in your institutes and in collaboration with Fundația Noua or other national partners. How do you find the partners? How this process of initiating projects work?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I suppose each of us has a different answer to that. I mean, I can start. For one, when I speak about Goethe Institute, we are here since around about 40 years. So, and we not only me, there's kind of a whole team that is working there, and is very much intertwined also with different local students in the culture and education sector, in the school sector. So that is where we also learn to understand what are actually the needs and where could we provide meaningful contributions in form of collaboration. So it's kind of a process that actually starts with understanding and listening what is actually happening and what could our role be, what is the need of local partners, of networks, of artists, of educators in all different forms. And through that process, which can take months, sometimes years, you get to know partners, you find partners with shared interests, and you start building projects. Sometimes it starts small and then it grows throughout the years, and that's how we come to the themes, to the partners, and to the projects that we are doing.
I agree with what Marcus said. So we try to be this bridge between the countries that we represent and local communities, local needs. So basically, it's important for us to find local partners that are working in the areas that are also connected to our national strategy here in Romania. And I would also mention, for example, for the British Council, we are happy to say that we were one of the partners supporting the International Shakespeare Festival in Craiova when it was founded. So it's really important for us to see opportunities, to see where the needs are and where partners are interested in this international exchange, and then invest in these local partners.
And if I may, coming from the outside, I think for local partners, or at least there is also this sort of feeling of being validated when you're able to work with such a network, which is usually also inspiring good practices in collaboration and other ideas. From my side, I would tackle a little bit of the subject of local partners around the country. So we go every year in, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 10 other cities in Romania, and what we found interesting is, of course, this is the most rewarding, let's say, part of a project when you start talking to the local partner and discovering what would be relevant for that area. But what I feel is that across the country, there's more and more professionalization. People are indeed looking at sometimes, let's say, I don't know, regional strategies or global strategies, and there are more and more people who are doing amazing work in countries. And I'm super happy to be part of this network, which is also amplifying the work that the people are already doing across the cities, which are small and big in Romania. So I think
that's great. And let's get to the HEI, the House of the European Institutes. What it is, what does it mean, what it brings to Craiova, when it will be open in Craiova. We know that it will be in the Minerva building in the center of the town, one of the most historical and beautiful buildings of Craiova. So what is it all about?
Should I?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so before 2023, actually, there was a lot of work being done with partners from Timișoara, and soon we realized that let's say a coordinated effort would be more efficient than doing bits and pieces of projects around throughout the program. So somewhere in between that, in talking with the municipality, we realized that we could activate the space for a longer time through the network, and it proved to be a very fruitful, let's say, sort of model, because this allowed us to come together and bring resources and basically meet the local sector and come with things that could support on a longer term. So what we bring is basically this idea of European networks, ideas, and contemporary culture in dialogue with the place where we come. But to get more concrete, we don't have all the answers yet. So we're still in the first phase of planning, but we are aiming to start as soon as possible.
What I would maybe also add, looking back at what Timișoara meant, so we opened HEI in 23, as you said, during the European Capital of Culture, and we had the space, the project, for 3 years. I think it was for us an opportunity to not only have this bilateral exchange between Romania and our country, but also a multilateral exchange between us, and then also have this space where we have contact with local communities. So through the projects that we proposed in Timișoara, each of the projects that we did there, we connected them with a local stakeholder to also empower local actors and also help them create other networks, international networks, have this knowledge exchange with the experts from our country, and then hopefully also work on the sustainability of still having partners in Timișoara. For example, even if we are not active with HEI in Timișoara anymore, our members are still collaborating with local partners in Timișoara that we somehow get to know through the project. And I think this is the important part about HEI. And this is also what we look forward doing here. So getting to know the local sector, understanding where are the needs, what would be interesting for Craiova, and then start puzzling together this portfolio of projects that we will bring to Craiova.
Yeah, and maybe just that, because I think it's very important what you said. It's I think it's often underestimated how complicated it could be for us to go outside of Bucharest, where we have our institutes and where we have our infrastructures, and at the same time we want to collaborate outside in the regions with different cities, with different communities, with different networks. And it's kind of when all your network and all your structures centered in the capital, then it makes it quite difficult to go outside. So we can collaborate on a one-time basis, and then we are coming and then we are going again, and it seemed to vanish somehow. And HEI is a possibility to create a space, a physical space, because HEI is also an idea, but it could be a physical space to meet, to learn together, and to develop new formats for collaboration, which is also important because we are learning with our partners. And you mentioned it already, it's still an open process, because it's we are coming with a certain experience and knowledge when it comes to, hey, how it was implemented and how it worked in Timișoara, but we are also very much need the input and the feedback from the local scene to understand, and you mentioned it already, what are the needs here and how could such a space and such an idea be adapted and shaped in Craiova.
But maybe if I could just wrap it up a little bit, just to be maybe a bit more concrete about what we could expect. We could expect exhibitions of contemporary art. We can expect workshops and all sorts of capacity building projects for artists, but also for the wider public. And also this idea of third space where people could just meet and have conversations, maybe conversations which are not necessarily the most easy ones to have, but we are looking at creating this sort of opening up dialogue. So, and I think all of us are very excited about the cultural space of Craiova and the region. So it's very nice and challenging, let's say, and exciting idea for us.
And developing on this idea, what is the structure of this? Who's the team? How can local actors from Craiova come to the unique team and propose events to take place in this space?
You can ask bummer questions.
You can find us until tomorrow here. So.
No, but we always start the process with a meeting with the local sector. So when we will know exactly, we'll get closer to the opening date, we will, and of course we are very grateful for the support that the Shakespeare International Festival is giving us and for the invitation basically to be here. And based on these conversations that we already started having, let's say maybe one-on-ones with people from Craiova, we will then see how we can involve people who are interested. And we also always do open calls for events. So we will.
Yeah, so basically in Timișoara we run an open call for local actors to just propose projects, and we offer our resources in the space. Yes.
You made a calendar in Timișoara for the open calls. How many events did you plan for example, for a year of this project?
I do not recall numbers per se, but I do remember that we did host around 1 or 2 events per week. So take that and multiply it by a year, something like that. So
it was a very lively place in which events were exchanging and coming and going, and it was this meeting place of different events and local and national actors. In applying this structure in Timișoara and then coming to Craiova, the team that worked on Timișoara was a team that worked in Bucharest and then applied the things in Timișoara, or how did this exchange work between the infrastructure of the center in Bucharest, as Marcus said, and this local structure?
I think Tamina is the best one to describe.
Yes, so basically, as we said in the beginning, the majority of our members are actually based in Bucharest. And even though we traveled a lot in Timișoara for implementing the project, we kept, we were the ones managing in Bucharest the members, so the relationship between the members. And then we had a local team in Timișoara to implement the project. And looking at how we will do it in Craiova, we are really happy to say that the Shakespeare Foundation is joining us as a local partner for implementing HEY here. So it will be a collaboration between the network and the local partner.
Let's develop a bit about the network. How does the hierarchy of the network work? Because you are a network of equals in a way, no? Different cultural institutes that, but in this network there is a president, and Marcus being here, and different structures. How this union of equals work?
Good question. Not quite sure if I can answer that. I still like to find that out. But I mean, it's mainly really, as I said, it's a network of equal partners. So that means that it's more about coordinating and less about hierarchy. Because there are different voices, different interests, different resources, as I mentioned already at the beginning. And that goes not only for us as a unique network, but for all local partners. It's the same. So we need to coordinate all that different perspectives and interests and find kind of the shared interests. And we need to communicate a lot, of course, to be transparent in that, because the work of the unique cluster network is about fair collaboration, it's about transparency. So it's kind of that is the main task. So even if there might be a president and a co-president, and then there are members, it's also circulating. So the presidency travels from year to year. So there will, every year there's a new president. So that is also kind of a shared practice. And that's somehow how we work. It depends also a little bit on the project. Sometimes there is an organization, one of the partners that says, I would propose that project, and partners up with just a view of that network. It not always have to be the whole network to work on one project, right? It's kind of minimum 3 partners, and then you can work together. And if there is a lot of passion with one partner and he takes more responsibility than the others because there are more resources or whatever, then that project develops in a different way than a project where the whole cluster is involved. So it's kind of, there's not one fixed structure and logic and hierarchy, but we try to adapt always in the context that we are working, with the partner network that we are working, that is also very different, and with the resources that we are working. Ideally, we would have a lot of budget and a lot of resources, which means we could put a lot of resources in communication, a lot of resources in project management, and so forth, and work also with external resources. Sometimes we have that, and sometimes we don't have that. So that's kind of a not so easy answer. Maybe it's a bit ambivalent, but it's kind of, we try to be flexible in that. And I think that's also a value and an experience that we also can bring as a unique network.
And what are some projects that you developed in 2025 and now in 2026 through this structure besides Hey?
Maybe the Sleeping Beauties would be a nice.
So we just, I think we are in the full process of selecting the 5 participants, artists who will be joining in this multi-residency program, which is called Sleeping Beauties. We started working together on this project 3 years ago, so this is the 3rd time it happens, and each year we have an independent curator who picks a theme. The first year, Adelina Luft, thank you so much, Adelina Luft, who was actually curating the Moldovan pavilion this year, the first Moldavian pavilion of Pavel Brăila in Venice. She curated the program in the first year on the theme of the ecology of water. So, and it was a year in which I think we lost 6 rivers that year. So it was very interesting for artists to go around the country and basically look from their own perspectives, because it's a multi-disciplinary model of residency. And then in the second year, we looked at a post-industrial heritage, and we traveled from Reșița to Bechet.
Drobeta Turnul Severin.
So we had many very different places where we went in last year, and this year we are looking at the architecture and care culture in balneary resorts. So Govora, Băile Herculane will be on the list, Borsec, Amara, and Teatrul. And artists coming from Germany, from Poland, from the UK, Spain, and Romania, right?
Yes.
And the Czech Republic, sorry. So this is the 3rd year in which it's happening. The artists have been selected, and in a few days we will be telling everybody who got selected. It's a very successful and nice project, because it gives us the chance to also look at an issue from different perspectives, and then we have this moment in which people who are involved, so every artist or architect or whatever is hosted by an organization that's already doing good work in that area. So bringing all the hosts together and all the practitioners together, I don't know, it makes a sort of a puzzle about a situation and ways to tackle this sort of situation.
And in the previous years, how did the artistic part look? Were there exhibitions? Were there performances that activated the spaces? What were some of these events that materialized in this context?
During the residencies, yeah. So we look at these residencies not just as an artist in residency, but as a collaboration between the artist and the local host. And since it's a short period, it's just 2 weeks, we are not putting pressure on them to have a final outcome. The only thing that we ask from them is to get in contact with local communities, and at the end of the residency to have an event with the local communities and share what they've been thinking, researching during the residency. And this was quite, I think we had like really different outcomes, from board games that were played with local communities to community dinners with people coming together and cooking together.
Workshops, even presentations, and I think for me it's one of my favorite projects, let's say, because in each place you go, it's a bit different. Like in some places, the hosts, for example, let's say maybe they don't have a relationship with the community, and this gave them the opportunity to actually engage with the community, but with an outsider coming. And it's quite interesting in small communities when somebody from the outside comes and says, "Look, but look what nature," or like speaks in a positive way about what's happening. It also supports somehow the community to have a better pride, maybe, about the local resources. Or in other places, the way the events are happening, because they're small communities, very different stakeholders are taking part. So it's a place where sometimes politicians are coming as well, but also the local, the people who are important and together with the community. So it brings new relationships, even in this small community. So it's I think, in terms of what comes after these residencies, it's very diverse and very rich in the form that it develops usually.
And I would also add that it's always a surprise also for us to see what happens at the end of the residencies. And just as an example, in 24, when the project was called Flowing Streams, so it tackled this topic of water as a social connector, the curator realized during the residencies that she could curate a small exhibition that we actually showed in Hay in Timișoara. So this is also one of the examples of what Hay could mean, so bringing together practices of different European and local artists.
And maybe again, because you mentioned it already, but I like to stress that again, it's not always only about the outcomes or the exhibition, the film or whatever. It's about the possibility of encounter with the local community and the shift of perspectives that is happening on the artist side, but also on the community side. And what comes after that, you never know, but it can spark something that might return in another project in some years or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then there are kind of, all the artists have a different background. They could be filmmakers, they could be painters, they could be performers in whatever sense. So they try to use the artistic practice, of course, to inform what they are doing during the residencies.
And for UNIC, for our network, I think it's a really valuable model because it gives us the opportunity to work with organizations in other parts of the country, in rural areas, in post-industrial towns, in balneary resorts, so in areas where we are not active on a regular basis. So it's
and where many times there is no cultural space per se, or little. The offer is quite small.
And the relationship between the artist and the community is managed mostly by the association, the local association, or that mediates this encounter. You know,
They are the facilitators, but
Yes.
it depends on the artist, I guess. How
Yes.
how the dialogue goes.
yeah, some of the artists are more solitary, let's say, or they like developing one-on-one sort of relationship. So it's always about who the person then we are talking about is, or how they feel. But usually, yeah, the hosting organization is facilitating the connection with the local community.
Beside the cultural aspect, the cultural events, all the cultural institutes have also this aspect of education and educating in different ways, educating languages, if it's the case of the Goethe Institute or the British Council or other institutes. And one of my last question is how these educational projects work, how are they applied, and what are the direction of the EUNIC in this educational aspect?
Again, I suppose you will receive very different answers. I mean, I suppose there are different levels, because when it comes, for example, with the Goethe Institute, we offer the language courses. Yeah. So these are German language courses. There are German language teachers doing those courses, and one of the education programs that we have and do is also training the language teachers with methodologies and new forms of kind of teaching. So that is one level that is directly connected to the language courses that we are offering. Then we are collaborating with schools and different educational organizations. And that is more a mix between education and cultural programs. So we then again try to find out what is relevant and interesting for pupils in different schools. For us, schools that have a relation to German language. What is their interest? That could be digital media, Instagram, YouTubing, and then working with that motivation and think about a project together with them that would include that motivation, but also provide them or kind of offer them the possibility to learn skills. So how do I deal with kind of digital media? How could I critically reflect the resources that I'm using when I'm online and so forth? So it's kind of that second layer of education programs, again, is developed in collaboration, but is more with the pupils and not with the teachers. And then with the UNIC class, it's also again very different, I suppose.
Yes, I mean, in our case, of course, as Marcus said, we're also delivering English courses, English exams, but maybe I would open the discussion or, open the discussion in another area, more in the area of education, but in culture, because this year with the cluster we are implementing a bigger project on arts and disability, so making the cultural sector more accessible both for disabled artists and for disabled audiences. And in the framework of this project, we will organize a bigger capacity building program for cultural workers on how to make their cultural events, cultural offer accessible for disabled communities. So we are also working in this area of non-formal education and knowledge exchange between our countries and the local communities, local stakeholders.
And the third thing we bring to the table, which we do together, is this mediation part. So making sure accessibility is very important for us. We very much agree of the fact that culture is not something which has to be complicated or very niche or very elite. So we are taking all the measures and proposing basically in general projects that are first of all communicated in an accessible way, but also we are adding this layer of workshops, meeting with the artists. When I don't know, when each of us we invite an artist, let's say in the future, hey, we usually ask them to meet the local public or propose a workshop. So there's this area which just brings people closer to and makes them understand more about contemporary art and culture in general, which is something that we also do with pride and happiness.
And one of the last things that I want to talk about is we are in the context of the Shakespeare International Theatre Festival. The members of EUNIC are one of the most important, I must say, collaborators and partners of the theatre festival infrastructure of Romania, helping with many different aspects. And I want to ask you how this work with the Romanian festivals and in particular when the Shakespeare Festival work for your institutions.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for that compliment. I think it's kind of there's such a variety and density of not only theater festivals, but now that we are in a theater festival, let's talk about theater festivals. And I mean that the programming and the curation is kind of wonderful and very, very complex, and it's the other way around, that at least for Greetings, we are not part of that edition this year, but fits in other festivals, for example. It's always a pleasure and a possibility to get into a conversation with the partners, and inviting a German company on actor or a dramaturg for a conversation is a wonderful possibility, because there are so many people and perspectives and discussions that are only happening in festivals in that density of a short period of time. So it's kind of, for me, the festivals are the most beautiful possibilities of collaboration.
Okay.
From the outside, I would say, which is, I used to work for the British Council, so maybe that's why I also know a lot about that. But what I found super interesting is that many theatre and the relationship between the institutes, the cultural European institutes and festivals has grown and developed differently. But what I found, and I think it's quite impressive, the fact that most theater festivals in Romania were set up with the great support of big institutions like yours. And I think that's already a legacy which is huge. I mean, in time, of course, maybe the relationship has changed, but it's always been a strong one. So, chapeau for that.
And the last question, which is for Tamina, before we go in and talked a bit about the research that the British Council in Romania did, and I want to ask you about this study.
Yes, thank you. So it's connected to the project that I was mentioning before. This year, the British Council launched the first research on how accessible the cultural sector is for people with disabilities. You can see it there, behind Octavian. And you can also find it here. So if you're in Craiova, please drop by, and you have some copies here. You can also find it online. It is the research that informed the project that we are doing this year with EUNIC. The project will start with a bigger capacity building part at the beginning of September, dedicated to cultural workers. So if you're working in culture and culture institutions, independent institutions, please check our social media channels, because you will find more details soon about this offer. And then we will start bringing international experts, matching them to local organizations in, we call them accessibility labs. So in this co-creation process between the local organization and the international experts, in order to make their cultural program more accessible for different kinds of disabled people or working with disabled artists.
This is very important, I must say, because also in the performing arts in Romania, there's a bigger discussion about accessibility. For example, at the Untitled Awards this Monday, the British Council awarded Supernormales, one of the only performances made by and for people with disabilities, with its special prize, and there's a talk also in the policies area about how we can make even the theater building accessible for these persons with special needs.
Yeah, I wanted to just mention how important it is, since it was difficult to give this award on Monday and having all of the disabled people on stage with us. And I would mention this since I know that this theater will go through renovation shortly, so please keep this in mind, to also include marginalized groups and other communities and make cultural spaces accessible for everybody. Yes.
Thank you so much for this dialogue. I hope that Hey in Craiova will have a long life, and it will become one of the important centers of this city, which has an important cultural life in different aspects, being theater. This is the context that we are in this Shakespeare Theatre Festival, but also in visual arts, in music, and every other aspect. So thank you very much for being with us today. Vă mulțumim și dumneavoastră că ne urmăriți. Urmează un al treilea interviu de la ora 15:30 și apoi mâine vă așteptăm la ora 11, 12:30 și 15:30 la ultima zi de interviurile Teatrul Azi, aici, de la Festivalul Shakespeare din Craiova. Vă mulțumim!